Well, this is a very important question, considering the circumstances. But before we answer that question, we have to really ask what is the significance of the UAE and Saudi Arabia and other countries in the GCC region. Looking at the example just not too far ago, 70 years ago, and what they have accomplished so far, they set a real life example of what success means. I lived in the region for 12 years, and I witnessed the region evolve over time. And the important point to recognize is they have relied primarily on American and British know-how, technologies, tools, resources, expertise, consulting, and so on. They took our tools and they've done a far better job than we have done with our resources and tools. That is a success story to follow. But what is the significance of the United States relationship with the region? The United States cannot afford to lose more allies in the region. We completely lost Africa, and now Saudi Arabia, UAE, Sudan, possibly Egypt and other countries. This has happened time and time again throughout history under what I would call the Democrat failureship. I won't dare call it leadership, because this is a complete disgrace and a failure. Why are these countries are significant? Because that region is the world's most important, most significant strategic location, as well as fundamental for global trade, resources, oil, and many other resources that are important. Clearly, the U.S. has been replaced in the region. China has penetrated and now is playing the role of the global superpower, brokering peace treaties and securing sizable contracts in the region. Recently brokered the peace accord between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And, the Saudis have been working closely with the Israelis and other allies, and we can't blame them. But direct answer to your question, yes, this has only happened under the Biden administration's failure, under their watch, and we are now risking the complete collapse of the petrodollar, which would have significant impact on the economic well-being in the U.S. And now that we're dealing with inflation and other disasters, but also strategically, because we will no longer, as the United States, be able to fund our military advancement, and therefore alienating Saudi Arabia and the UAE would dramatically weaken our interest in the region, and forever we will no longer be the major player in the Middle East.
Yeah, I think its record has been mixed. Let's say that. You obviously had several disasters, probably the biggest one being the Afghanistan withdrawal, which was horribly botched and was chaotic and violent. And of course, the decision to sort of peremptorily withdraw from Afghanistan was poorly handled as well. The Afghan National Army collapsed very quickly, despite assurances from the Biden team that would not be the case. So to me, that stands out probably as the biggest blunder thus far of the administration. In Sudan, I think we had a similar situation although thank goodness the results were much better with the evacuation. The U.S. government seemed to be caught a little flat-footed when the violence broke out. Now, nobody can predict exactly when these sorts of wars that we're seeing in Sudan will start and how they will progress and what the exact dimensions of them will be. But it had become pretty clear that tensions were rising rapidly. Armed groups, the RSF especially, was moving large numbers of fighters into Khartoum and taking up strategic positions, and the Sudanese armed forces was also making counter moves. So the writing was on the wall that something could go very badly very quickly, and yet the U.S. still seemed to be caught off guard by the violence and didn't appear to have a plan in place to get its people out, embassy staff and U.S. government personnel. So I think there's been a series of missteps there. I give the Biden administration credit on Ukraine. I think they've handled it fairly well. It's a difficult balancing act when you have the Russian bear looming. It has nuclear weapons, of course, but you also cannot allow it to just invade sovereign territory of a neighbor. So I think there's a fine balancing line there that the administration has more or less walked with some competence. But yeah, there's many other issues we could discuss, but probably we don't want to spend all day on this one topic either, because as interesting as it is. Well, clearly, again, the Afghanistan withdrawal was a disaster, and yes, that has ramifications for American national security. I also worry about the Iran posture that this administration has taken. I think under the previous administration, during the Trump era, that policy was pretty effective, actually. It dissuaded Iran from some of the adventurism that it likes to get up to. I think the killing of Qasem Soleimani was especially a pretty effective deterrent. It also, of course, withdrew from the JCPOA, which was a badly flawed agreement. So I think that was the right tack to take with Tehran. But the Biden administration has somewhat reverted to sort of the Obama era policy, which is focused on lots of carrots and seems to be willing to take the Iranian regime's word for certain sensitive issues, which I don't think anyone should take Tehran's word on its nuclear program. So yeah, that also obviously has pretty severe implications for American national security. I think that's absolutely the case. I think that there's a sense in the Middle East that the United States is not particularly engaged in that region, or at least that it's not engaged in a sort of competent way. And that has led to other actors, again, like Beijing, which brokered this Iran-Saudi deal. Now, I have my skepticisms about this deal. I think there's still just profound differences between Tehran and Riyadh that are going to that are going to cause problems, continued problems for the relationship. So I'm skeptical of the deal, but I think it's a worrisome signal that the United States is losing significant influence in a really, really fragile and important region. We all know the reasons why it's important, and the Biden administration has not done as well, I think, as it could have, as it should have, in ensuring that the U.S. interests are protected in that region.
First of all, I should say that since January 2021, the Biden withdrawal from Afghanistan was a tragic failure. And then U.S. foreign policy in Biden administration just strengthened the adversaries. And he was not successful in actually competition with China and Russia. It was a disaster in Afghanistan that helped the global terrorism. And specifically in policy regarding Iran and Mullah's regime, the Biden administration couldn't help to actually control the terrorist approaches of Iran around the globe. These reasons was the main reasons actually that Saudi Arabia and Emirat and Bahrain, they went to open a new windows for China. And in other words, we can say that the China right now is a new manager of the region, because the Saudi and China are major strategic allies, and they increase cooperation in energy and financial sectors. But the main reason for Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates was the failed, and I can say catastrophic, foreign policy of the Biden regarding the Middle East. For example, in Iran issues, in Russian-Ukraine issues, in Cuba and Venezuela issues, totally Biden was wrong. And regarding Iran, which is the enemy of the peace and stability of the Middle East, Biden was failed also. He just followed the failed strategy of Jimmy Carter and Obama. So these reasons we can say that the mullahs right now are marching toward acquiring a nuclear bomb. So in other Middle East major powers, they like to ask China to have their stability, which is which is a clear reason. So for Secretary of the administration in the Bidens, actually they have no clear vision regarding the policy in the Middle East. And this failed strategy actually is a significant threat for most of the states in the region.